Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of this series called Stand Up and Out on the Forgotten Generation podcast with your host, Troy. This series is about amplifying the lost voices of young people that are misrepresented in SEND and invisible disabilities, sharing lived experiences to stand up and out in the world on their journeys. Today's guest on this episode is Olly. Would you like to introduce yourself, who you are, age, and what is one word that describes you and your disability to the listeners?
I'm Olly, I'm 25 years old. I've been a disability advocate for around 7 years now, and I'm very driven to make change for young people and change the world for the better, and make disabled people's voices more amplified.
Wow, incredible. I thank you so much for your introduction and thank you for coming on to today's episode.
I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm so glad to hear that. And so we'll start with, and what is your journey as an neurodivergent person, and also a disability young person as well?
I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy at around 10 months old. I went through mainstream school, both high school and primary school. But at 17 years old, I realised that I wanted to make a change in the world. Well, I've always really wanted to make a change in the world. At a young age, I had a keen interest in science and wanted to create a cure for cancer. That was my original aim. And then as I grew older, I felt a bit lost in the world because I didn't know how I could contribute, and I didn't know how be able to get a job in the future. So at age 17, I joined after my mum and dad harassing me to join my youth voice group because I didn't really want to, because I thought it didn't really make any change. But then I realised when I got more comfortable that I had something to offer and that my views were being really heard and listened to. And gradually they put me on a platform. At first at Lancashire County Council to allow me to be able to get my voice heard and use my voice for good, use some of those bad experiences I've had in the past and use them for good to make change in the future. So I think it's all about using your voice for good and using those bad experiences in a powerful and positive way.
So empowering in your journey because I really think it's so amazing how you've even started all of the youth voice stuff and an idea that you had until now because you're doing incredible things. And because I know you're part of Barnardo, you're because a youth advisor there, but you do so many incredible things on there as well. And I think your voice is so powerful. And would you like to tell me a little bit about other Barnardo's work, what you do?
At Barnardo's, we work with co-op to empower young people through 20 services in the most deprived areas of the UK to empower young people to, to have a better start in life and to really have a good grounding and really be empowered to use what they've got for good.
Thank you so much, Ollie. Absolutely. Bernardo's does incredible work. And for any listeners listening, and definitely check Bernardo's out. And so, who inspired you to make a difference in your community as a neurodiverse young person and young person with a disability?
As a person with a disability, as I said before, I really, I found my mum and dad quite inspiring because from a young age, they never really accepted, well, they accepted my disability, but never really accepted the limits it put on me. Like, they used to take me to America and Canada and up castle walls in Scotland so I could see the most of the world that I could. So that really informed my perspective of disabled people shouldn't be limited. And that's what I've taken into my advocacy work around education. That if you have a good starting life through education. A disabled person with the right support can go far. And despite all government cuts, I still think disabled people and people that are neurodiverse should have the correct start in life to be able to thrive and to be able to become the best person they can and to develop their purpose.
I agree. So, so inspiring. And what you said about you and your mum and dad inspiring you and just because I very much just helping you find your voice and supporting you in the journey in that I think is so beautiful and well said.
I think to be honest with you, I think there's various people that have helped find my voice from youth workers to family, but I think youth workers have had a massive impact on my life, showing me that I have value because as a disabled person, especially a young disabled person, you struggle to find where you fit in society and where you can make a contribution. Youth workers I had from when I started my advocacy journey really showed what contribution I can have in society. So that's really inspired me to go on and use my voice.
But it's so remarkable and so, so empowering. Youth workers absolutely inspire so many young people like you and myself because I went to a youth club and I had youth workers who really understood my voice, who understood that I can make a difference and they kind of and supported me along the way into what I'm doing now. So well, well said, Ollie.
Thank you.
As what has been your personal and barriers and experience you faced in your journey?
Well, throughout my primary school and high school education, I faced barriers obviously because I had a scribe and stuff, a scribe and things, which was really difficult to find my way in education because getting the right support is difficult. And we're seeing that more and more with children and young people due to like national cuts in said budgets. Children and young people are struggling to get the correct support in order to thrive. So I struggled in an exam-based education system, but when I went to college, I thrived through assignment work because I thought I work best in assignments because having a disability in scribe is not the best in exams. And then in disabled people on transport's an issue because you struggle to get onto buses and trains due to the small areas that disabled people are meant to get into, especially on buses. It's almost impossible in an electric wheelchair, especially if you want to travel together. There's not a single bus that allows two disabled people on, which I think is absolutely disgusting because disabled people should be able to go out and enjoy the day together, not just as single people.
Absolutely, I agree. Like transport is a big issue for young people and with disabilities because it can be very hard to even get on public transport, buses, trains, because there needs to be more support in that, but also education as well, you touched on. I mean, that is definitely a barrier in that. I think a lot of schools don't understand young people with disabilities at all. I think sometimes they kind of like and think to themselves that we can do all these things, but in reality we can't because maybe we're struggling in our learning. And that's why like I think support needs to be in place, and don't you think?
I feel like with schools, when you say you've got a disability, they almost put a cap on you, on your ability, because you've got the disability. So they expect you to only achieve a certain amount. But with the support of adults and teachers, disabled people can achieve a lot. And it upsets me that because of money and funding nationally, disabled people aren't reaching the full potential that they can show that disabled people can actually do stuff, can actually contribute, and can actually live a fulfilling life.
Exactly, and they can, and they can actually get a job, and they can and get a house if they want to, and they can do all of the incredible things that other young people can. But I think just people, I think, judge us, and they like, and we shouldn't really because Everyone's different.
To be fair, I think the judging's becoming less and less, but I do think national budgets are restricting the amount of support
Mm.
schools can give. Schools just need to be creative in the way they support people. Like some of the best cases I've heard of young people being supported are where schools don't really spend any money. They just put creative support methods in place in order to allow that disabled person to be able to access school in their way. And if you speak to disabled people, because they know how they want to be supported, so you should include disabled people in those discussions around support plans, because that's the best method of a disabled person getting the support they require to thrive.
Well said. I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. I think a budget needs to be more better for young people to be able to support those with disabilities. But I also on agree on what you said about, and to make sure that those young people thrive in that. And yeah, I think it's so, so important. And that leads me to, and the next question about you actually touched on them, like on the last question is, what are the key issues young people with special educational needs and disabilities are facing right now and why? And you touched on education.
The crisis in educational needs support and disability support is massive, because if you don't get the right start in life and the right education, you can't then take that into adulthood. And schools and settings should maybe find creative ways that don't cost much money so it doesn't really harm the budgets, to support disabled people in the best possible way so they can access their education and schooling. Because believe it or not, education is a human right. So really, without this education support, they're denying them access to one of their basic human rights.
Exactly, like human rights of education and accessibility and that support, I think is very much a big issue.
But also, as disabled people going through independence, there should be more housing, allow, allowing disabled people to be independent adults. Um, I think the government need to look at the housing strategies and maybe put in place on all new developments, whether it's flats or houses, and maybe houses with hoists in, with ramps in, so disabled people can live as independently as possible.
Absolutely. I think that is what I think government needs to be taking more accountability for, making sure that young people with disabilities can even have ramps, but also help them in housing and just help them in preparing for adulthood. And also, I think, like with schools, I think there's lots at the moment with young people, with education and healthcare plans, and that's not being met. And for those specific young people who need it, I feel like they've kind of been forgotten. Do you think that as well?
I think they're kind of trying to get it right in at the start of life with it, allowing people into mainstream education, which is fantastic. But they need to put the right support in place and make sure people are supported in the right environments, but also allowing them to live independently when they get to that adult is also crucial, because it's pointless giving them the education and then not giving them the independence.
Yeah, exactly. Need to and supporting that in the adult world, but also the education side of things. And if you were the Prime Minister or an MP, what would you do and say to them in better supporting our voice?
I would say to listen to the people that need the support and put education at the forefront, because you need to put people to support at the start in life to be able to thrive in later life, and then also to put the housing in place, like put a 5% quota on disability housing to allow people to have the right support to gain independence, to gain good quality employment.
Yes, absolutely. I would vote for you if you're Prime Minister.
It's all about not just giving people a good education, but giving them the tools to then be able to use that good education as they go into adulthood.
I agree. because like I think a good education helps them to prepare for adulthood and prepares to know what adulthood will be like and to support them in that.
They might have all the education in the world, but if they haven't got their housing to be independent and they can't get a job because of the lack of independence, it's almost that education's null and void to some description.
I think like accessibility in housing, I think, is very important, and also just the education side of it to really like support those young people with disabilities who actually need independence. And like you said, that free moment to be themselves and be able to thrive.
Yeah, and to be able to live without the guardianship of their parents all the time. Because disabled people, especially people in wheelchairs, maybe don't want to live with the guardianship of their parents all the time. They want to move on like every other adult does. So disabled people have the right to do that as well.
Exactly, they do. And so, what is one piece of advice to a young person wanting to stand up and out but don't know how to?
Just find your local voice group and then hopefully if you show them your capability, if you show them you're willing to give your voice in whatever way possible, hopefully they'll give you the platform to be able to share your ideas and make the changes you want to make.
Fantastic advice, Ollie. Thank you so much for your lived experience and just coming on today's I Stand Up and Out episode to really talk about have a conversation of your journey and just being a disabled as a your person and just the journey you're on is so inspiring and so inspirational, and I really hope listeners
Uh,
listening to this episode will really and take away on what you said today.
Also, one good way of doing advocacy, as you know, Troy,
Yeah.
is online because it can reach multiple people at once. So the advocacy that you're doing is also fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much, Ollie. Please support the podcast by subscribing and rating the podcast. I'd love to hear what you like and what could be better for future episodes. If you want to find me, you can find me on Instagram and iwill.troy and also on X, iwill_Troy. Tune in to next week's episode.